Now, whilst Blackview might not be a mainstream brand here in the Western world, they do offer some pretty good phones in the budget segment, offering some great specs at some pretty low asking prices, rivaling phones from Motorola and Xiaomi. And the new Blackview Shark 8, which can be found for around 150 quid or sometimes less on Amazon, offers some really great specs at that low asking price. But is it actually worth buying? I'm hopefully going to be answering a few of those questions in this video, so let's take a look. So the design of the Shark 8 is pretty typical of other budget phones around this price. It's an all plastic build with some nice flat edges, and the back is a bit of a matte feel to it. It does do a good job at detracting fingerprints, and it is also available in a black colour as well, but naturally I picked the blue. You do get a headphone jack on the bottom, followed by a microphone, speaker grill and USB-C charging port, and the phone does support 33 watt fast charging, which is really great at this price. On the right of the phone, you get your volume rockers and your power button with integrated fingerprint scanner. At the top, it's completely clean, and on the left is your SIM tray, which houses your SIM card, and then provisions for expanding that with a micro SD card. So overall, the design of the phone is really nice. It's pretty lightweight, and that fingerprint scanner works pretty quickly. And then of course on the back, you've got a dual camera setup with a 64 megapixel primary camera. And then I'll be perfectly honest, I've got no idea what this second camera is. I can't seem to find any literature on it. It's probably a depth sensor of some description, but they don't put any of that information in the spec sheet. And then you get a ring light on the back as well, and a LED flash. Now the display of the Shark 8 is kind of basic, but at the same time, not so much. It's a 6.7 inch 1080p panel with a fast 120Hz refresh rate. It is just an IPS LCD, so you don't get the nice deep blacks and clean whites that you'd get from an AMOLED panel. I'm not really going to complain too much about the quality of the display. I have seen nicer ones at this price, even nicer IPS LCDs, not necessarily AMOLEDs. It isn't the nicest display I have used, but it is absolutely fine. And of course, that 120Hz refresh rate makes the overall user experience really fast and really responsive. You do get pretty slim bezels all around the phone, but of course, naturally, you do get a bit of a chin on the bottom. And then up in the top center, you get a 13 megapixel selfie camera, which can shoot 1080p video at 30 FPS. So overall, I can't really complain too much, like I said, about the quality of the display. Colors do look pretty nice, but it is noticeable when you go to like a black background, it does have a little bit of a gray look to it as opposed to black. But again, overall, it's a pretty nice display. Those slim bezels are really nice, and it is very smooth at the same time as well. And as for software on the Shark 8, you get Blackview's own Doke OS version 4.0 slapped on top of Android 13. So of course now it's not the most up-to-date Android software, but it is update enough for my use. And overall you do get a pretty stock Android-ish experience. Of course, Blackview's Doke OS has its own look to it, but you do get the usual customization options in terms of themes and wallpapers and fonts and all that sort of stuff. And my overall experience on Doke OS 4.0 has been pretty pleasant. There's not really any bloatware on the phone at all. There's no preloaded games or anything like that. You do get a couple of Blackview's own apps, but they're not in the way or anything like that, so I haven't had any issues at all. Overall experience using the Blackview Shark 8 has been pretty pleasant, and that is repeated down into the performance. Now, while it does use a MediaTek G99 processor built on a 6nm fabrication, it is just a very mid-range chip, but it is enough to get me through my usual day of just moderate use. Obviously, intense gaming, the phone will likely struggle, and that 6nm architecture does make it pretty power efficient as well. The one major downside with the Shark 8 is using that G99 is a 4G processor, so you don't get any 5G connectivity, so you don't get that future-proofing in terms of your mobile networks. But overall performance for me has been absolutely fine. While it's not going to be the best suited for heavy gamers or anything like that, it's absolutely fine for your bog standard person like me who just uses it for the basics. And this is backed up with 8GB of RAM, but you can also boost that with 8GB of the 128 gigs of onboard storage to give you up to 16 gigabytes of memory on this phone, which is great if you're someone who does heavy multitasking. It should handle that pretty well. And of course, 128 gigabytes is enough for most people. It's not the highest in 2024, but it should be enough for most people in terms of photos and videos and games and all that sort of stuff. And of course, you can expand it as well. So overall, you get pretty good specs on the Blackview Shark 8. And as for the battery, you get a large 5000 mAh battery, which is absolutely fine for getting you through a full day of pretty heavy use. You can definitely stretch the phone to 2 days of light to moderate use, and that 33 watt charging gets you charged up pretty quickly should you run out halfway through the day. And lastly, if we take a quick look at the cameras on the Blackview Shark 8, It's headlined by a 64 megapixel primary camera and then an unspecified second lens, most likely a depth sensor. And photos from the main camera come out pretty good. There's a pretty good amount of detail. I have found that color has been a little bit inconsistent. With some scenarios, the color's looking nice and punchy, whereas others, they're looking a little bit flat and a little bit dull. But overall detail is pretty good, and you do get some nice natural depth of field when you're taking pictures of leaves and stuff like that. And then portrait mode is, I think, is probably the most inconsistent part of this phone. I have taken a few portrait photos and the cutout has been a little bit inconsistent in terms of around my face and things like that, where colors are very similar as in my face and the background. It does struggle sometimes getting a nice clean separation with those portrait shots. But in other situations, it has done a much better job, example when I'm outside. So it's one of those things that if you take a lot of portrait photos, you might be better off with another phone, as the Blackview Shark 8 isn't the best that I've tested on a smartphone. And video, of course, is just your bog standard video quality. You do get a 2K option when shooting video, so you do get slightly higher resolution, of course, than 1080p, but not quite 4K. You do get that in between if you're into that. But for me personally, I tend to use just 1080p video for most of my shooting. I do that on my YouTube videos, and it's never really been an issue for me. And then the front-facing camera, 13 megapixels, produces some okay photos, and again I found the portrait mode to be a little bit inconsistent in terms of its cutout. Despite Blackview using these ARC soft algorithms for better photo processing, it doesn't seem to do the best job in terms of portrait modes on the front facing camera and of course on the rear facing camera as well. But 1080p at 30 FPS video coming from the selfie camera, again, is just bog standard video, nothing to rave about. It's plenty for your home movies of your pets and your kids, etc., but definitely nothing to write home about. So overall, that's my quick look at the Blackview Shark 8. Overall, I think it's a really nice phone. It's got a really nice build quality to it. It's nice and lightweight, it's nice in the hand, it doesn't feel too big. Despite having that 6.7-inch display, it is pretty lightweight. And overall use of the phone, personally for me, has been absolutely fine. That MediaTek processor is plenty for me for my day-to-day tasks, and that 120 Hz refresh rate just makes the user experience a little bit smoother. Now, of course, the downsides for me are the inconsistent camera, and then of course that display not quite looking as nice as the competition, even other IPS LCD panels. But for 150 quid, I don't think you can complain too much. That battery life is absolutely fine for getting through a full day, and that 33-watt fast charging is great at this price. A lot of Motorola's don't even have that charging speed. So let me know what you think in the comments of the Blackview Shark 8. Is it a phone that you'd consider buying? It is available on Amazon at the moment for about 150 quid, and I think it might be on offer at the moment for about 130. So again, let me know in the comments if this is a phone that you'd consider buying, and I will see you in the next video.